So welcome back. And next topic is going to be how artificial intelligence can be safe, ethical, and productive for a positive human impact. For this, I would like to talk with Nancy Nemes, General Manager at Nemes Ventures, founder of Human AIs, and author of the Proust Questionnaire, How to Make This Dream Come True. Founder of Human AIs and former global leader at Google and Microsoft, Nancy is a tech trendsetter and a hands-on leader with 20 years of global experience in high tech across Europe, US, Canada, and South America. During her career, she was distinguished with various awards, of which one she is particularly proud of. And this is a paper written for Bill Gates' Think Week initiative. In recent years, Nancy has pioneered, implemented, and optimized the impact of mobile, digital, and social aiming at enriching people's life through smart, connected devices and services. She also serves as a keynote speaker at international conferences on the subjects of connected life in the 21st century, the impact of new technologies on various demographics, and how the attitudes, expectations, and perspectives of Generation Z and even Generation Alpha will reshape marketing, branding, and sales. So I'm super honored to welcome Nancy on the stage.
Well, thank you so much. Good morning from Munich, Germany.
So welcome. We're super happy to have you here. And to begin with, I have an interesting question for you. Recently, I found out on your blog that creating ethics for AI should apply some Buddhist Zen mode. So what can you say about that?
That's really interesting. You've seen the Buddhism entry on my blog. Well, first of all, thank you. I'm honored to be with you. Lithuania is a country very dear to my heart, so it's great to be with you today here. The reason for my activity around humanizing technology is precisely what you see in the Buddhism piece, is that we really need human ingenuity. We need the human innovation. We need the human creativity in order to make sense of all this technology. So I love that example. There is basically in Japan, there is a Buddhist temple, shrine, which is basically using robots trying to convince people to join technology, but also join religion. And I was talking about religion and technology, particularly artificial intelligence, for a while now. I think it's a very hot topic. I think even the Pope in the Vatican is now having a working group around artificial intelligence from the ethics side of our technology. So highly interesting domain, very important to close the circle and really put forward the human ingenuity in all this.
And somehow I would complement that AI and high-tech area is somehow like religion itself. Once you are in, you become a true believer, a true preacher. And we are super happy to hear your speech today. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Wonderful. Well, and you guys have asked me to talk a little bit more about making this technology safe and really giving a few examples on how to do that. So I would love to talk today about the how-to piece. To your point, believing in the topic you are discussing is a very important element of being successful. But of course, you should also be critical, especially in this area. So I have prepared a topic for you today on how to make technology, and in particular artificial intelligence, safe, ethical, and productive in order to really make the best out of it for humanity, because as we know, it can also have very negative sides. So let me go to the next slide with a little story. And you have mentioned the Buddhism. That was a story from Japan. Today, I would like to talk to you a little bit about ancient China. And what can ancient China tell us about technology today? And the story starts like this. Around the year 1200 before Christ, this means more than 3,200 years ago, the Shang dynasty in China has developed basically a very special system to building thousands of huge bronze vessels for use in everyday life and ritual ceremonies. And in this early example of mass production, the process of bronze casting required very sophisticated planning and the coordination of large group of workers, which each one of them was performing a separate task in precisely the right order. A similarly complex process went into manufacturing the famous army of terracotta warriors 1,000 years later. And these statues that you see on this picture were created using an assembly production system that paved the way for advances in mass production and commerce. And clearly, these early forms of prescriptive work technologies, I'm just repeating because it's so important to understand. It's not for the first time that humanity is thinking in these terms. These forms played a very big role in shaping Chinese society. And this led to people having to accept bureaucratic structures and hierarchies. And we will see how humanity will change today because of the pandemic. Now, today we can take that thinking even further. Consider machine learning algorithms. Using real-world examples that mimic human cognitive behavior, the algorithms that we are creating today are already everywhere, in the workplace and in our private life. But to capitalize fully on them, we must redefine human tasks as prediction tasks, which are more suited to work and to do how algorithms work. And in order to make it beneficial for people, information about people has to be treated as accessible, as recordable data. And just like in the Chinese system of mass production, the core functionality demands certain social practices and discourages others. In particular, algorithms run directly counter to our desire for personal privacy. But if we follow the natural flow of algorithmic logic, a more communitarian culture is actually inevitable. And this steady transformation will have very far-reaching implications for our democratic institutions and political structures. And if that current trend continue, and you can see how it does continue, people were very concerned and are still very concerned about data privacy. But look where this is going now with the pandemic. It is basically impossible to know what happens to my data when I enter a restaurant and I have to show, I'm in Munich right now in Germany, and if you go to a restaurant, you not only have to show your vaccine, but you also show your ID, because people want to see that this picture of mine is the same as the person that has the vaccine. And then they record this. And I went to Romania the other week, and they record this, and I don't know what happens with my data, right? But we have to find a way on how to really understand how to work with this. So if the trends continue like it does for thousands of years, we might soon have more in common with the Chinese meritocratic and communitarian traditions than with our own history of individualism and liberal democracy. And with that, I would really like to talk a little bit about the European Union. And you may know that in 2019, in April 2019, the EU has released a set of guidelines for developing trustworthy artificial intelligence systems. And the enterprises are just starting to realize now the ROI with AI applications. It's okay. We are working on this for many, many years. This is not for the first time. We may call it AI today, but we are working on this for many years, like we do for many other other technologies, for example, blockchain and crypto, is not something we created in these lately years. They exist for probably 40, 50 years already. And so as we are looking at the movement to make these systems ethical and responsible, we are still in the early stages. This is the first time we really think about it in these terms. The core of the guidelines of the EU requires applications that use capabilities of what we call artificial intelligence to be basically they're using 3 words. Number 1, lawful. Number 2, ethical. And number 3, robust. So we are talking about capabilities needed in the technology that should be lawful, should be ethical, should be robust. These are very, very big words. Wrapped up in this idea of trustworthiness are the concepts. Really trustworthy, means transparency, means ethics, means also responsible AI. And just as we have very different definitions of AI, in my world, AI is at the broadest sense, really everything. So when I think about AI, I'm not only thinking about machine learning or about specific types of applications. I'm thinking about the whole system, including the software, the hardware, and the applications. Now, some ways in which enterprises can put trustworthy AI recommendations into practice include, and I would like to give you really a few very pointed examples. Number 1 is to maintain data privacy and security. Not an easy task, as we've seen earlier. Look across the AI system lifecycle and make sure, if you're an enterprise, make sure that portions of your system that interact with data and models are secured and maintain data privacy as required. So that's one of the very big requirements. That usually means you probably have to hire a team of specialized people looking just into that, depending on the size of your organization. Of course, if you hire, if you outsource, but that is really a very important area. The second important area is how do we reduce bias of data sets to train artificial intelligence models? How do we examine training data sets for sources of potential bias? And how do we make sure that communities that should serve my product are represented in a fair and equitable way? And I can give you a great example. I'm working for my entire career. I've been working in this space. And right now with Microsoft in the United States, we have formed a council that is called the National Council for Artificial Intelligence. And we are working across specific vertical industries. You can find this on the web if you Google for Microsoft, National Council for Artificial Intelligence. A very, very interesting way of looking at this. We started with the banking and financial sector. We're moving into the healthcare sector and others. But the core of the work we do here is that we put very diverse people together, very diverse functions together to precisely do exactly that thing, to work on how do we examine bias. What does that mean? We keep talking about that bias, but really go deep. And we were actually forming specific working groups that go really, really deep. We look at the specific issues in that particular industry. We work with banks, with academia, with think tanks. Research is a very big part of this, so research bodies, and we look at the specific areas where bias could happen. So, for example, in the United States, if you live in specific areas that might be underrepresented, how do we make sure that those communities are getting access, for example, to money, to a credit in the same and fair and equitable way as other areas? There is a famous example saying, when you enter your zip code, let's say you apply to get a credit by your bank, you enter your zip code, and it happens that the algorithm puts that zip code into the specific bucket that says, you're living in an underrepresented community, I can't give you a credit. How do we find out about that bias? And how do we find out an equitable way to not go into, to basically be fair to everyone and not go into that issue? The third element here is transparency. And the question on how do we provide the transparency into the data usage. And to that respect, organizations should let AI system users, let's say you are using a specific application that I created, let me know how you are using my data to train or power the AI systems and to provide visibility into aspects of data selection and also data usage, but also how the business model that AI system supports. It's very important to understand this. Regulators are looking into this. So large companies basically also invite regulators and specific representatives of government to basically be part of such communities where we basically look into co-creating these things together so that transparency is really provided to the extent that the AI system might be invisible to the user. So maybe I don't see what happens, but a responsible AI usage shows and tells me that I should let my users know that they are interacting with an AI-based system. Very famous example here, a chatbot should tell me it is a chatbot. So it's not enough to call your chatbot, "Hi, I'm John, I'm going to help you today," but let me know that you are a chatbot and I'm not interacting with a human behind this window, right? So, and that will also explode with usage of chatbots in future. The fourth aspect here is keeping the human in the loop. Even when AI systems are operating in an autonomous fashion, there should always be a person keeping an eye on system performance. And there should always be an appointed human and a system of owners or a group of people who are responsible for that. And users should also be able to know how and whom to reach out to when the AI systems might be showing any problematic behaviors. So really important to, again, close the loop back from technology into the human. And that's why I'm saying, don't worry about the jobs of the future. People will still have jobs, except they will be different than the job we have today. And that's why skilling, upskilling, reskilling, huge efforts that the countries and our education systems should make to ensure that we have the right skills in the future. There will always be a human in the loop. That's very important in order to keep trustworthiness and ethical usage of technology. And finally, limiting the impact of AI system on critical decision making. So with that, if the AI system is being used, let's make an example of the pandemic right now, is being used for a critical life or death situation or a high impact decision, there should always be an identified failover process or a human oversight to make sure that no harm is done. And, good example here, a very big, very, very big ethical discussion is what happens right now in the ICU units of the hospitals when there are patients on the one side that need to be treated for COVID, but there are also the other patients that might have cancer or other illnesses. And as systems are getting more and more, automation will be a very big part also in healthcare. It's very important that our algorithms are not triaging without having a human in the loop to make the decisions. So at the end of the day, the whole concept of trustworthiness, which is a part of ethics, is all about humans putting their confidence in machine-based systems. And trust is something we need to win over. I cannot demand you to trust me. I cannot tell you, oh, please trust me. I need to show you that I am trustworthy. And it is vitally important for those that are looking to put AI into a real world use. It's important that they pay very close attention to these issues of trustworthiness and responsibility, and that they show they are doing it. As AI is increasingly becoming a part of our daily lives, trustworthiness will make a difference between AI systems that are relied upon and those that are shattered due to concerns or individual fears. And you may know many companies have appointed teams, for example, at Microsoft, but many other companies, Siemens, Oracle, many companies are looking, and not to speak, of course, about Google and even the younger companies are looking into adding teams that are called responsible AI. So there's teams that work only on responsible AI to understand how to address that for their specific area. And now I would like to give you a quick framework on how to drive the right mindset, because all of this requires a specific mindset, and how to drive that mindset change, which is different from what we need today, in order to ensure effectiveness. And clearly, when you think about mindset, you always have to think about what is the purpose. Mindset comes with purpose. So if you sit behind a team that really is tasked to create a specific autonomous system, what is your purpose? Why are you doing that system? What do you want to reach? And the real question here is, are you ready for this? You might have a great vision. You might have a revolutionary idea. You might even say, I have identified my purpose for AI, let's say. But the question is, are you ready for it? And how will this transformation look like for your professional life, for your personal life, for your organization, and for society? And you may wonder, again, if machines will replace the human workforce, but part of it or most of it, you have to answer different questions. What kind of hybrid collaboration models do you need to create to basically drive that definition of the purpose? And you may have heard about the concept of singularity. Very famous, I'm sure this group is pretty familiar with the concept of singularity, or a single entity. In this case, it's the robots. There are people that are saying robots and machines will become so intelligent that they will even overcome human intelligence. I'm wondering, how is that possible? Myself, I have the opinion that as long as you only know about 1% about how our brain is working, it is very hard to make that statement that a machine will be smarter than a human being. Now, today, I do want to talk about the concept of multiplicity, not singularity, but multiplicity, which is a concept created by Ken Goldberg, a professor of engineering at UC Berkeley. And basically, that general fear that machines will take over the workforce and replace humans as a whole is an example of singularity. That's an example, or workforce from one unit. So in this case, robots take over my job. Multiplicity represents a hybrid workforce consisting of a diverse group of machines, plus people working together to achieve what I would call superior results. And so together, we then create more than what each group could achieve on their own. And so my thought that if there would be one single thought that I would like to give you from this speech is that really think about it in terms of multiplicity, not singularity, and try to make the best use of humans working within this system and creating more value together with those machines or specific systems that they are creating. Depending on the process, people can focus on strategic or on creative roles. We know, we've heard about that. They can also focus on functions that relate to basic business decision making rather than just execution. But what's really crucial here is that EQ, our emotional intelligence, basically specific to humans and represent the soft skills that we should prioritize in our education programs of the future. So I would like to see classes on ethics. I would like to see classes on specific values that grow around. I would like to see a curricula that is promoting right brain thinking and ensuring that common goals are formulated and achieved in this formula, human plus machine. And finally, let's talk a little bit about audacity. before you are making your big plans to track your artificial intelligence projects, make sure you have up-to-date information. First, ask yourself a couple of questions. Who are our employees? Really, who are they? Do they fully get what they want from my company? Do we fully understand what they want? Do we fully understand how they want to work? What do they no longer want to do? Why do they work for this company? What would make them love this work and this place more? Because that's the only way to really provide an environment that makes humans creative and passionate about the work they do. Therefore, that will lead into a more ethical way of working together. And secondly, what does the society need? So now, of course, I'm talking about the human individual, but what does the society need? And how do we connect those needs to the business needs? How do we connect it better to the employees, to our customers, and to our company's purpose? And I think we will see a lot of new leadership questions coming up. These are really important aspects of driving an ethical society, and such questions will make the difference between excellence in AI and the rest. And as you may know, there was a study 2 years ago, I believe, done by a consultancy in London that said, and I think it's true to today, it said 75% of the companies that are labeling themselves as being an artificial intelligence company are not. They are not really having the elements of AI. It's more about a story that they want to tell. So at the end, I don't even think it is about the technology itself. It's really important to deliver what you promise on, of course. But what's important here is the multiplicity in your mindset. And we can see now in the complex world we are living, in the hybrid world we are living, how also companies like the people that are behind this conference did an amazing job on creating this hybrid model of a conference. And that demonstrates also your multiplicity in mindset. And so as we go closer to the end of my talk today and opening up for questions, let me just give you a few of what I think are the key requirements to drive excellence. For me, it's all about really how can we excel in the most valuable way possible. And to drive excellence in this era of the algorithm, I think the focus, and certainly not alone, I have a very big community in which I collaborate with, where we are very convinced that excellence will be driven by a focus on people, mindset, and not least on money. It's really important in order to lead. We have to use the synergies. We have to create added value, and we have to humanize our ways, influencing development and discovery together. And Europe needs to define its own strong role and develop a shared vision of AI. It's easier said than done, but I think also forums like this one, we can discuss and we can form, and hopefully there will be a follow-up even after this conference, that we can basically create a shared vision that it is anchored in the European core values. And that is a culture of empowerment to innovate. We can innovate in Europe really greatly. We have amazing research and academia power. We can create a multidisciplinary research community with a very diverse approach. And I see a lot of efforts going into that direction here in Europe as well. And finally, to retain talent, companies need to rethink the way they incentivize employees. And it's not just about giving a free lunch anymore, especially now that the world is moving more into this hybrid work, but really is about allowing your employees to be part of the profit. How can I actually share the company's success? How about profit sharing, even for smaller companies. I know this is the case for the large companies, if you work at Google, if you work at Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and others, but even also some of the unicorns here in Europe, in Eastern Europe, they are providing profit sharing. And that is a fantastic way to really rethinking incentives in the era where it's not about the pizza anymore. It's not about the free pizza because employees may not want that anymore. So to summarize all this, we truly need smart data, trustworthy, reliable, and transparent data. But most importantly, we need big politics. We need our political systems to really play and create those multidisciplinary mindsets that will help us drive together into the right direction. And with that, if you are interested in a more diverse perspective, my book, The Bruce Questionnaire, is actually asking 22 questions about artificial intelligence to 22 experts from very, very diverse backgrounds, from philosophers who are answering some of my questions about ethics in AI, all the way to artists, all the way to doctors, but of course to technology and business people. And I think there are very different, very various perspectives in these questions, most importantly, the answers that my beautiful humanized family have provided. So with that, thank you so much, and I'm open for questions and a discussion.
Thank you very much, Nancy, for such a great presentation. And what acquired cash? And would like to ask, we've been talking a lot about human ethics, but what about the robot ethics? When we reach and we already started hearing about it, that how should we treat them? You remember maybe the case when a dog robot was kicked and then there was a huge scandal around that. Is it ethical? Is it not? So where are we moving towards that direction as well?
Yeah, and this is such a great question, really. Thank you for asking that. And actually, you know that people, when they kicked that robot, they actually felt bad. So the human being who was kicking that robot actually felt like, oh my God, I kicked the robot, so maybe I hurted him. So reality is robot ethics is now a growing interdisciplinary research effort. There are a lot of research organizations. To name just one of them, I work together with IEEE, which you may know, maybe they are part of this conference, and they basically work on applied ethics and robotics, and they are trying to understand the implications and consequences of robotic technology and of course on autonomous robots. So research plays a very big role here. The question is, I guess we need the philosophers to help us understand, should robots have ethics themselves? Should they have their own set of rules? And also, how can we basically look into the subfield of ethics into the all up, not just the robots, because we should not reduce AI just on the robot side, but should we give rights to the robots? And there are also big research efforts in Japan, for example, that are looking at specific rules and regulations to drive a more inclusive discussion on this. I think also it's a very fun area to discuss. I think it's more of part of a research domain, less so on the business side, because you have to have the means to spend your time on working on those questions. But that's why I think please also think about involving ethicists, involving philosophers in any of the big questions like that, because what are the ethics that should govern robot behavior is a highly ethical question that I think a philosopher and an ethicist should be part of the discussion. The other question is really around morality. Should robots be moral? And of course, with the autonomous cars, with the driverless cars, you have these very big questions around what happens in the era when autonomous car needs to make a decision around, which situation to avoid, if there is an accident on the road. And in India, they were working on some of these examples as well. Depending on which culture you are living in, you may have very different answers to this question.
Great, thank you very much. And as well, I'm interested in another topic. When we speak about diversity in AI, you spoke a lot about how to make it a diverse environment, but as well, you actively promote females in this area. And if I quote you, you would like to enable 10 million women in AI by 2023. So, is it possible, or how do you think this mission will go?
This is a fantastic question. And, the only way to do it is we do it together. And I think you right now with this conference, you're helping all of us doing this, enabling the 10 million women. And actually, I actually broadened up a bit that vision. We enable 20 million humans because half of the population is female. In order to enable this many people, we all need to do something about it. And creating a conference like this, I don't know what's the female ratio right now in this conference, but basically, if it goes like it generally goes 20-80, 30-70, we already have reached a number today. So I think with Human Eyes in the last 2 years, we basically reach about 1.5 million female users. I believe it's 2023 was initially the year for me to create together with my community to create these big numbers. It is very ambitious. We have to have big dreams, right? But the way to do it is by educating, is by inviting to talks like this, to conferences like AI Boost and others, is by collaborating. Every single one of us can do something about it. And maybe in my speech, it was clear that education is the key factor here. All around technology, it's really about educating the next generation. That's why I'm very passionate about bringing hackathons to girls and involving children and involving their parents and women, and really making sure that we go very broadly in our aspects. I'm also happy to see that many different organizations are starting to collaborate. So co-creation is a very important element in driving that inclusion. Inclusion and diversity is not possible if we don't work together.
But diversity is not only about the male and female ratio in the company, but as well when we speak about societal issues and the workplace ethics. As robots and AI, they learn what we teach them, right? So how do you see this balance, and can we actually make AI stereotype-free?
Well, so first of all, yes, diversity is very broad. I'm not talking about diversity just in terms of gender. We have diversity of thought, of culture, of language, of ways of looking at, but also this whole hybrid world that is now putting a machine along with a human to work together. I think the far-reaching scope here means we have to take out some of the biases. So to your point, how do we remove stereotypes? First of all, we need to be aware of them. And having a discussion like this is opening minds. And then the question is, what type of stereotypes? To give you an example, in the healthcare industry, it's about age factor, very important. What do we do with elderly versus younger people? In the financial industry area is more about underrepresented communities. That's also part of diversity. Then you have the gender racial bias. And so how do you basically look at the impact of that technology has? So asking the right questions. It's always start with asking the right questions. What's the product supposed to do? How do we create as much equity, as much inclusion as possible? And just having that question asked at the board level, at the management level, at the leadership level, and then all the way down. So this is not just the leader. It should start and be triggered by your leadership teams, but everyone should engage in discussions around flexible thinking around this, about social justice, about equity, about privilege. So really around how do we drive all that diversity inclusion. It's not just a fashionable word, but it's really when you see what a technology can create, then it's clear that we need to drive a lot more. And I'm very happy to see that companies are looking at, I'm not talking about just the goals companies have in hiring diverse people, because as you hire diverse people, it's not just the right thing to do, but it's also better for your business, because now you can ask diverse questions, those diverse minds, those diverse people with a diverse backgrounds, not just in gender, but really hire people of different backgrounds, of different cultures. Researchers in the research area, it's already very diverse. And so we have data that shows that the more diverse your workforce is, employees, the better your company will perform, because they can ask the right questions. Preventing bias is, of course, a very hard area. We know that we are biased, and unconscious bias is the largest issue here. So it's going to be a never-ending question. And I don't think we will be able to prevent it. It will still be there because it's human. But being aware and asking those questions and making sure that, the people that are receiving the technology at the end of the spectrum, so our customers, that they really understand, even people understand that if we are not asking the right question, the results of our technology can be very destroying. It can be very disastrous. So I'd rather ask the right question.
So thank you very much, Nancy, for bringing those questions up in the first place for people to think about them. And I hope you continue to humanize our whole society and the world. So all the best with your projects.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. All the best. Please feel free to connect with me any way you want, email or LinkedIn. I'm happy to continue the dialogue also offline in that spirit.
Great. Thank you very much once again.